3 things that happen when you log your data. If it doesn't get measured, did it even happen, bro? Let's see if Hanju's up to something. A couple weeks ago on the Better Golf Academy podcast, Hanju talked about logging your data. And when I heard those terms, I was squarely in the heck no category. I don't have time for that. When I'm out on the golf course, I just want to enjoy the breeze on my face. I want to enjoy the camaraderie, just having fun, hit the ball. In fact, I called Hanju up and said, hey, buddy, I can't do this week's episode because I just don't buy into it. I'm not going to be able to fake this one. And he gave me a friendly reminder that I actually do track data at the bottom of my scorecard. And then it hit me that, yes, he's right. I do track data, but I don't do anything with it. What a waste. Now, I have said it here that I do have my player ability test coming up at the end of April, and I do have a goal of shooting even par there. And so I just straight up don't have time for mindless practice and guessing. That's where this guy comes in. This is the Journal 18 Golf Journal. Now, I've never owned anything so official before. I just, like I said, wrote everything on scorecards and then threw them away, didn't do anything with them. And this is the one that Hanju recommended me to get. I've never felt the need to do any of this, but hey, if it helps me improve and get more efficient in my practices and take the guesswork out of my scores, then hey, I'm open to it. Without all this fancy stuff, I have an impression that my wasted strokes comes from penalties off the tee box, comes from 3 putts, but the primary offender is shots from 30 to 100 yards. And so we're going to put that impression to the test. I have my 5 previous rounds logged and recorded on YouTube. I'll link them all below. And we're going to just straight up watch through those, log all my shots, and we'll see if Hanju's up to something. Okay, so we spent some time logging our 5 previous rounds, and I have 3 takeaways. But before we get to that, what came out loud and clear is that it is a lot of work. And so if you're not committed to improving your game, or you don't care about improving your game, you're just there to generally improve, then this is definitely not for you. By logging my data, I found 3 things happen for me. I got way more efficient practices. I got a boost in confidence, and I was able to stick to the process more easily. And I'm going to break these 3 things down right now. We all have 24 hours in the day, and chances are golf is not your first job or the way you make your livelihood. And I'm going to guess that if you're here, you are looking to improve your golf game. And so if that's the case, golf is kind of like not your main job, but you want to get really good at it. You want to invest time in it. And there's this tension, the struggle. We all have 24 hours in the day, and we have things pulling us in all different directions. So efficient practices are a must. And by logging your data, you'll get super granular on what you have to improve. For example, I had this general thought that I need to improve my game in the 30 to 100 yard range. And that is true, but by logging my data, I was actually surprised to find that I need to focus on 3 specific distances. It's 30 yards, 70 yards, and 100 yards. Sure, I have pitches that are 40 yards or 66 yards, but it was abundantly clear that in my rounds, these 3 distances came up quite a bit. And so if I focus my efforts on these 3 distances, I don't have to go out mindlessly and try to fight for a spot on the pitching green and then only to practice like distances that I don't actually encounter on the golf course. For putting specifically, I've learned that I can make a really big improvement if I keep practicing and get more confident in the 6 to 8 feet range. And the reason for that is that on a course, when I'm playing my rounds, I generally make all the putts that are within 0 to 5 feet. Those are almost like gimmies to me. And 6 to 8 feet is where I made less than 50%, which I know based on data is kind of the golden standard to a 0 handicap. And so I can get better between that range and really improve that range and not spend so much time practicing 12 to 20 footers, which I do because I just didn't know any better. And so that helps me make my practices super efficient. For some reason, I had this impression that I needed to practice 12 to 20 feet, and I do, but I don't need to devote like half of my time on the green, my precious time when I get to sneak out. I can practice the bulk of my drill and kill stroke between 6 to 8 feet here at home with my perfect practice. And when I get a chance to go on the practice green, just fine tune that, practice my reading and my routine, and then practice those 30 to 40 foot lag putts. And outside of that, sure, maybe hit some 12 footers, 15, 18, 21 footers, but with the intention of not drilling and killing and getting comfortable with making X%, because on the course, I know the numbers. That's not where it's going to move the needle. So by logging my data, I learn exactly where to narrow in, and I'm able to be laser focused and just straight up save more time and energy. And it's a really good feeling knowing that I don't have to drill and kill for hours out there in the cold or in the sun. I can spend very targeted amounts of practice here with Perfect Practice at home. And then when I do get out on the practice green, just practice those specific distances. Now, as for those 30, 70, and 100-yard shots, those are a little bit more tricky. I've spent quite some time already in the backyard with the Garmin R10, just drilling those distances. I haven't gotten out to the range much, but when I do, I will be sure to hit that 70 and 100-yard distance. And for that 30-yard distance, I've spent quite a bit of time in the backyard getting that down. I know that when I take my sand wedge to that 730 position and do a natural release, that it'll go 30 yards, and I feel really good about that. Quick side note here, if you have some room and some disposable income, I would highly recommend the Garmin R10 or a Mevo even, a practice net and a mat, because if you want to take your practice to the next ultra laser focused level, this would really help you get those distances down and you don't have to leave your house. Logging my data really helped me boost my confidence. Like I mentioned, I'm already feeling really good about those 30-yard pitches. I feel like I can put it within 8 feet and then drain that putt. But not only that, logging my data helped me get confident in having a picture of what my tee shot dispersion looks like, what my approaches look like. I know that I tend to miss my tee shots to the left. And so when I'm on the tee box, I know and I am aware of the things that are on the left, and I can either pick a different club, pick a different approach. And effectively what this is giving me is a dispersion chart that I can rely and go off of. I'm not playing any guessing games when I'm on the tee box, which is huge. I also got a boost of confidence because I got visibility into areas of my game in the past that have not been sustainable. For example, when I played Washington National, I drained a bunch of 12 to 15 footers for par, which kind of goes against what I said just not too long ago. But while it was awesome to drain those putts during the round, those 12 to 15 footers, I know that it's not sustainable. I mean, by the numbers, I'm better off practicing that 8 feet and under range. And the boost of confidence also comes from clarity. So when I shot that 95 at Washington National, it was a horrible score, don't get me wrong, but it actually didn't feel like a horrible round. And that's because with this clarity, I was able to see that 14 shots came from penalties. And, I just blocked those out. But I actually hit 50% of the fairways in regulation, even counting those that I hit out of bounds, which is encouraging because even a zero handicap hits half of the fairways. So there's always a positive to take away. Another one is that even though I shot 95, I had 32 putts, which is not bad. So this leads into my last point, which is logging my data helped me just focus on the process. Like I mentioned, I went through and logged data for my 5 previous rounds. And after the first one, I was already having more questions like, okay, I know I had a pitch, but how far was that pitch and how far did I leave for that putt? And so it becomes this virtuous cycle of like, okay, I have all these numbers, but they're not necessarily the most helpful. So how do I actually log the data that is helpful? And then you kind of get into this wrestle match of like, okay, well, that's too much. And so I have 2 things here. One is that we're working on a spreadsheet that will help you track what actually matters and what will move the needle in terms of your score. So if you're interested in that, check out bettergolfacademy.com/log, LOG. And you'll be the first one to hear when the spreadsheet drops. Because if you're just merely logging your data, like that's helpful. But then there's this other layer of like, okay, that's great. I know all these things, but what do I actually do with it? And so that spreadsheet will be geared towards like, okay, what do I actually go out and practice? Also, logging your data can become kind of confusing, right? Like, for example, if you have a putt that's like 3 inches off the green on the fringe, does that count as a putt? Or if you're going for a par 5 on your second shot, is that your approach? Or is the third approach your green in regulation metric? So we're going to help you break all that down with a spreadsheet so you don't have to think about all these little minute details. But there are some minute details that you should care about. For example, if you missed an 8-foot putt, do you tend to miss the left to right ones more or the right to left ones? Or if you have an approach shot into the green, are you better served if you have a shorter shot in or a longer shot in? In other words, should you hit driver more instead of using a 3-wood or a hybrid for the sake of it. So I hope this video has brought you some clarity. Like I said up at the top, if you're just trying to generally improve your golf game, then probably this isn't for you. If you're gonna think that this is a tedious, boring thing that you have to do, like, yeah, it's not for you. But I'd say if you want to break that 5 handicap or maybe get into the single digits, and definitely if you want to hit scratch golf, then you do need to get laser focused on your practices. You need to make them as efficient as possible. And like Hanju said, you need to log your data. So I hope you enjoyed this video. If you want more content about golf improvement without changing a thing about your golf swing, consider hitting the subscribe button below. And if you've got someone in your life who's plateaued or is looking for that next breakthrough, please share this video with him. I hope you make it a great day, and we'll catch you on the next one.